All right. Good morning, everybody. We're getting things started. Of course, I am Perry White. This is On the Yard Network, and this is SEC baseball recap of the weekend. Of course, my man Zach McKinnell is about to join me here in just a second. We're going to recap everything that happened over the weekend of the SEC baseball series around the conference and look around the top 25 of college baseball and just see where we stand as we inch closer and closer into the month of May. And then before you know it, we're going to be talking about conference tournaments. We're going to be looking at regionals, super regionals, and all types of things. So let me get my man Zach on right now. We're going to be ready to rock and roll. Hope everybody had a good weekend. Enjoyed yourself. Zach, what's going on, man?
What's up, man?
What's the word?
Man, you know what it is, man. NFL draft was this weekend, and then on top of that, too, man, we had some really, really big series this weekend in SEC baseball. Looking forward to breaking that down as well.
Man, aside from that, man, just talk about a lot going on in the NFL draft quickly, man. Anything surprise you with the draft?
I mean, outside of the debacle that was Shador Sanders, nothing too surprising, man. It was a good draft for the FCS. Got to say HBCU got drafted in Carson Vincent. Shout out to him. And now on to tracking these UDFAs and minicamp invites. I think we're somewhere around about 110 total minicamp and UDFA deals. So there'll be a lot of FCS HBCU guys that get their opportunity at the next level.
Looking forward to seeing how things turn out for a lot of guys, man. And as we keep things going, of course, I'm Perry White, my man Zach McKinnell. Zach, before we get started, man, let everybody know where they can keep up with you as always.
Yeah, man. The Blue Bloods on all social media, or all podcast streaming platforms, and YouTube, and then right here on Monday morning, man. Monday mornings, man, recapping SEC baseball, and then FCS Football Central on si.com/college/FCS.
Interesting series this weekend, man. I had an opportunity to go to Alex Box this weekend and watch the LSU and Tennessee series, man. What a hell of a series, and we'll get into that. And then we'll look around, especially with some top 25 matchups happening this weekend outside of the SEC, of some big-name teams getting it in. A lot of rivalry games happening and taking place this weekend as well. Excuse me. And as I share this across all these different networks right now, trying to get people to get in here and tune in with this, man. I tell you, Alex Box was electric this weekend, man. The LSU Tiger fans came out and supported the team, and it really helped them as they move forward with that Tennessee matchup. And, as we jump right into it, let's go back to, as we always do, those midweek games, Tuesday games from last weekend. Just quickly, we go through them. Texas A&M and Sam Houston were in a big one. Texas A&M gets the victory 13-3 against Sam Houston in that one. Tennessee taking on Lipscomb. Lipscomb falls short in this one by 10 runs. Tennessee gets the victory 11-1. How about Florida taking on Georgia Southern? 12-1 was the final in that ball game. Kentucky and Louisville. This was a game we were talking about. Number 19, Louisville taking on Kentucky. I didn't see this one coming. 17-5 the final in this matchup between these two teams in Kentucky and Louisville, Blue.
Extremely interesting game, right? Like you said, I did not see this one coming. But at the same time, too, man. I j- it just kind of shows baseball, man. Like when the bats are hot, the bat the bats get hot, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so a really really impressive just impressive game in the midweek, man. And I'm trying to pull it up here and look at some of these stats, man. And SEC site, of course, is loading a little bit slow on me right now, but man, huge midweek win right there.
South Carolina taking on UNF. South Carolina gets the victory 3-2 in that one. How about Alabama taking on Samford? Alabama gets the victory in the midweek game over Samford 11-7. Then we go Middle Tennessee State getting the victory over number 9 Vanderbilt. How about Middle Tennessee State over Vanderbilt?
Did not see that one coming at all. Because I think we kind of talked about Vandy. It kind of seemed like they were starting to trend in the right direction, and they kind of had themselves in position to maybe make a little bit of a run here late. And man, I thought this was one we're going to look back on and say that they had to have this game.
You look at number one, Texas had taken on Texas State. Texas State gave Texas everything they can handle, but Texas pulled it out 14-11 in that one. This one caught me. A midweek game between two SEC rivals, Mississippi State and number 23 Ole Miss. It was a little interesting. It went into extra innings. Ole Miss gets the victory 8-7 in a midweek non-conference game.
Yeah, a big and important win for Ole Miss. I think again, we kind of talked about this. What was it, a few shows ago, Perry? Just on how tough it is to kind of figure out where we should put Ole Miss, right? And I think you saw that just in the midst of this one game, right? Like 1 second, it looks like they're in full control, and then Mississippi State's pushing them, and they find a way to kind of get out of there with a win. So Ole Miss, this was a much needed win, especially because if you drop this game, even though it's not a conference game, Perry, you feel way less certain about them competing. In the postseason and staying, I would say, with the same pace as some of the top to even mid-tier teams in the SEC.
You got Arkansas Razorbacks taking on in-state the Trojans of the University of Arkansas, Little Rock Euler. Arkansas gets the victory 10-0 in that one. How about Missouri and Missouri State? Missouri State all over Missouri, 11-0. Anything there for me?
No, I mean, nothing really major there. That Perry, I picked Missouri State. I see 11-0, no, but I think this just shows how bad Missouri has been this year, man. That they have been arguably one of the worst yeah, but one of the worst. I wouldn't say, there's not really a P4 divide, but one of the worst notable brands in baseball this year, man. What is it? 0-18 in conference play now, and now you're 13-27. This team is by far the worst team in the
I
SEC.
hope to see some investment into that program moving forward. This was one that I said could be a shocker, and it was. Oral Roberts taking on number 14 Oklahoma. Oral Roberts gets the victory 5-3 over Oklahoma over in Norman, Oklahoma, Blue.
Big time win there for Oral Roberts. Barry, it's funny because I want to say it was like the second week we had this show. You were talking about how Oral Roberts is always a team you can't overlook.
Mm-hmm.
And that will always catch somebody. And it's funny because this year's Oral Roberts teams isn't really that impressive. I mean, 10-6 in conference play, 23-15, and they go and get a huge win over a top 15 SEC team at the time. And that's a massive win for Oral Roberts and a really, really tough loss for Oklahoma, who's trying to keep pace there in the middle of the pack of the SEC.
One of these midweek SEC ACC matchups had number 10 Georgia taking on number 2 Clemson. In this one, Clemson gets the victory 3-0 over Georgia. How about Clemson in the ACC?
Hey, we kind of talked about this, like I think it was last week, right, Perry? We talked about how those top ACC teams would compete in the SEC. We talked about Georgia Tech, we talked about Clemson, we talked about Louisville. I think Clemson's legit, man, and I think they deserve the ranking they have right now, which I think they're still number 2 in the country. A 3-0 win over a top 10 SEC team was huge. But Perry, we also talked about this. Georgia's got to figure it out, man. Georgia has really been struggling of late, and I really do think this is a team that needed a big win in the weekend series. They got it, but yeah, following the midweek, I was a little bit concerned about the Bulldogs. This was a tough loss for them.
Another big ACC SEC matchup. How about Georgia Tech and Auburn? These two teams have been going at it all season, this time over in Auburn, Alabama. Auburn in a close one. 1-0 on this one. I watched this one Tuesday night, man. This was a great game going back and forth between both these teams. Only 2 hits for Georgia Tech, 5 on the other side for Auburn as they hold on to get the victory.
Massive win for Auburn, especially because Perry, we kind of talked about how Auburn's schedule laid out really poorly for them. They've had some really tough road series in the SEC. This was a must win, a big win, and so I think it further solidifies how tough the SEC is, right? Because you look at Auburn, 11-10 in conference play. Perry, in terms of like RPI, they are one of the top teams in the country, and it's because they've done such a good job getting these signature wins and out of conference play, and it just shows how well the SEC has performed even outside of its own conference.
Performing well right there. And then the shocker. Didn't see this one coming. Northwestern State coming down to Baton Rouge and getting the victory over number 7 LSU at the time, 13-3. How about Northwestern State putting up 6 runs in the third inning and add another 3 in the sixth and the seventh as this game was called early? Northwestern State shocks LSU at home this week on Tuesday.
You could have taken all my money and more, Perry. I did not see this one happening. I mean, this was a really tough loss for LSU. This was one that I just really didn't see coming. And it kind of like reminds me of, you remember when Tennessee lost to, I think it was ETSU when they were
It
rolling
was. And
earlier this year. But
and
to lose,
interesting enough about ETSU, they're one of the top home run hitting teams in the nation coming out of this weekend.
that's crazy. Yeah. I mean, look at the foreshadowing on that one, right? But I mean, Perry, you look at this game and it was really just, it's funny because you'll get the reference on here, but it was kind of like self-inflicted wounds for LSU. And this guy, I think it was what, 3 or 4 errors in this game is what it
Mm-hmm.
came out to be. And I really do think those errors led to Northwestern State putting some runs up on the board. And then once that momentum got rolling, it was really tough for LSU to recover. And I do wonder if maybe they were looking a little bit past Northwestern State, who came in, with a very long shot chance of winning this one.
And like, let's jump into the midweek after the midweek games. Let's jump into the weekend games. Started on Thursday, 2 teams who lost their midweek game. This was a matchup of 2 top 25 teams. Number 14, Oklahoma, taking on the number 10, Georgia Bulldogs over in Athens, Georgia, and in game 1. How about Oklahoma getting back on track, getting the victory, 8-6 in this one, 8 runs to 6 runs. Oklahoma putting up 2 runs in the second, another 3 in the sixth. Georgia tried to battle back late, putting 4 runs up in the 8th and another 1 run in the bottom of the 9th. Wasn't enough for the Bulldogs because they had 11 hits and 2 errors in this ball game. On the other side for the Sooners, 11 hits, 1 error. Oklahoma goes up in that series 1-0. Then we move on to Friday. Georgia gets back on track. 10-9 is the final. A lot of scoring in this one. Georgia off of 7 hits, 0 errors on the other side for the Sooners. 10 hits, 0 errors. We got a 1-1 matchup here going into game 3 of the series. And in game 3, how about Georgia pulling it off 6-3, the final in that series? Georgia wins the series off of 6 hits, 0 errors in game 3. On the other side for the Sooners, 5 hits, 1 error. How about the Georgia Bulldogs getting the victory over Oklahoma and holding it down over in Athens, Georgia this weekend?
This was a must win for the Bulldogs, Perry. A must win. Because you're starting to kind of look at the standings, right? Where you're looking around, it's like if Georgia drops this series, they potentially could fall to what, 500 or below in SEC play. I mean, they're 12-9 right now. They're only 1 game ahead of Auburn, Oklahoma, only 2 games ahead of Kentucky. They went, Perry, from almost a consensus top 5 team in the conference to now they're threatening to drop below the midline in the conference. And it's kind of a shocking thing. And Perry, we've talked about it every week. They were so hot with the bats that I think it was bailing out their pitching. And the bats have not been as hot as they once were starting the season. I think that started to catch up to Georgia. They're going to have to find a way to be more consistent as a whole pitching staff. But this was a must bounce back series win for them. And I think it hopefully can springboard them into maybe some rebound series wins as we inch closer to postseason play here.
When coming to conference play, and as they started out conference play, they had them at that time as one of the elite teams in the conference. I kept saying I was not quite sold on this Georgia Bulldog team because there still needed to be more to be seen from them as they get deeper and deeper into this tough conference play of the SEC. I think you start to see it add up week in and week out with this team. And then, with this weekend matchup with Oklahoma, this, like you said, was a must-series win for them. But for me, they're starting to look like the middle of the pack, like the rest of these teams in the SEC, as they continue to add up those losses. But getting a victory in this series was huge. But I must say, I'm still pumping the brakes. I'm not all the way sold on the Bulldogs moving forward. They still have a lot more to prove to me to be one of the elite teams in this conference.
Completely agree that they're going to have to. They're in 1,000% prove it mode at this point.
And they're going to have to prove it. I'm waiting on them to prove it fully to me. Let's move on. Missouri and Alabama. Of course, Missouri has been struggling in conference play, winless in conference play to be exact. On the road in Tuscaloosa, taking on number 18 Alabama. And this one, Blue, I must tell you, early on, we know it's never over. But how about Missouri jumped out in game 1 to a 5-0 lead, 5 runs in the first inning? It looked like this could be the upset, but not so fast as Alabama put up 3 runs in the 6th to add another 2 in the bottom of the 8th to hold on to win 7-5 in game 1 off of 10 hits and 1 error for the Crimson Tide. On the other side for the Tigers of Missouri, 7 hits, 0 error. Alabama goes up 1-0 in the series. Then in game 2, 7-3 is the final as Alabama held on to hope to win this one off 11 hits, 0 errors. On the other side for the Tigers of Missouri, 7 hits, 0 errors. 2-0 in this series for Alabama. Then we go to game 3, and Alabama did what we thought they were going to do. Handle it soundly. 11-1, the final score in this one off of 15 hits for the Crimson Tide, 0 errors. And on the other side for the Tigers of Missouri, 5 hits, 0 errors. How about the Crimson Tide putting up 8 runs in the bottom of the 2nd to add another 2 in the bottom of the 3rd, and then just kept tacking it on in the 4th and the 5th inning to pretty much seal the deal here. Missouri 0-21 in conference play. Alabama did what they were supposed to do and handle an opponent that they were supposed to and get the sweep over Missouri.
I don't have much to say here, Perry. Missouri's bad. That's the takeaway from the series. Bama did, like you said, the perfect, I would say, description of the series is Bama did what they were supposed to do, because there was a time there where it looked like Missouri was going to get that first
Yep.
win in conference play. Bama responded. This was a massive win for Alabama. And now you're starting to look at this SEC standings. Bama is well positioned right now, tied with Ole Miss, Vandy, Georgia, only 1 game back at Tennessee, only 2 games back at LSU and Arkansas, to potentially work their way into the top 5 of the SEC. A massive series win for Alabama. They've won 5 in a row now, Perry. Possibly watch out for the Crimson Tide.
And speaking of Arkansas moving forward, how about the Razorbacks on the road in Gainesville, Florida this weekend, taking on a Florida team who we talked about started SEC play tough, had went winless for a while there, couldn't win a series, but how about this one? Holding it down against the number 5 Razorbacks, and in game 1, the Florida Gators get the victory 6-4 over the Razorbacks in this one for the Gators. 7 hits, 0 errors on the other side for the Razorbacks. 6 hits, 1 error in this one. Start to raise eyebrows. Okay, Florida is waking up at the right time. They're catching heat. We go into game 2 of this when the Razorbacks get the victory 7-0 over Florida in game 2 as they tied this series 1-1. The Razorbacks in this one off of 7 hits, 1 error on the other side for the Florida Gators. 5 hits, 4 errors. And then we go into the rubber match in game 3. Who's going to win it? Can the Razorbacks hold on? And they don't. They fall short to the Florida Gators 9-5. How about the Florida Gators getting a series victory over a top 5 team in the nation at home? 9-5 is the final score for the Florida Gators off of 12 hits, 0 errors on the other side, 7 hits for the Razorbacks and 1 error. I'm starting to look at the Razorbacks, and have I been talking about this for the past few weeks? Dave Van Horn, and I'm talking about the Razorbacks, how they give you this expectation where it sounds like, you know, they win these games, this game and that game, and they get into this position of national ranking. And then what did? They start to struggle along the way. No doubt about it, still one of the best teams in the country, but could not drop this series to Florida after dropping the series to Texas A&M. They have lost now, the Razorbacks, 3 series so far in SEC play, man. This was a tough loss for the Razorbacks, but an even bigger win in this series for the Florida Gators, who are looking to rebound and turn and get some national attention.
Huge win for Florida. Again, though, I kind of catch myself feeling I think they're going to need to put some sweeps together, just because they fell so far behind. I mean, they're still 8-13 in conference, tied with Texas A&M. But even with all the success they've been having, they're still 2 games back of Kentucky, 3 games back of that middle group of what is it, Auburn, Auburn, and like was it Georgia, Bama, Vandy, the 3 games back of those guys. So Florida's going to just really string some series together, but this was a big win. But also, too, I think it just shows how tough it is to win on the road in the SEC. Perry, I don't know if we've kind of addressed this. 8-0 this week for home teams.
Big thing. Big,
It,
big, big.
it, it is tough to win on the road, man. And I think that's where you're going to see some of the separation, right? You look at the team at the top of the SEC, right, Perry? Texas, best record in the SEC on the road, 9-1. That's what it's going to take to win this conference. And I think this, even with how big of a win it was for Florida, Perry, I think this was a bigger loss for Arkansas, because now that gap between them and Texas becomes even bigger. And I think, they're tied with LSU, only 1 game above Tennessee, 2 games above Ole Miss, Vandy, and Bama. And you're looking around the SEC now, it's like, man, who is going to catch Texas? Because Arkansas was in the best position to do that, right? And now it's almost to the point where unless Texas falls apart, they kind of got this thing clinched. And so I think this was a massive loss for Arkansas, man. And like you said, is trending in the wrong direction. And you called it about 2, 3 weeks ago that this is the Arkansas blueprint, man. We get really, really hot early, and hey, we fizzle out toward the end when things start getting serious. And it looks like we're kind of trending in that direction. I haven't given completely up on the Razorbacks, but Perry is not looking good right now.
That's still one of the tougher teams in the country, period, point blank. It's just when it comes to these big games, and the Razorback fans know what I'm talking about. When it comes to these games that you put your finger on and say, man, I think we got it, the Razorbacks find a way to say we don't have it. And I think with this one, you have to look at it, and Van Horn has to begin to look at this team and say, look, we got to get this together. 3 straight losses in the SEC series play, heading then going into this weekend. They have to get things together and get it together. Now is the time to fix it before you get into conference tournament and before regional and super regional is on the line. Now is the time to try to fix and figure out, okay, Razorbacks, what are we doing? What can we do to get better? And how can we fix this now so we won't have this lapse on the back end? And I think Razorback fans know all too well exactly what I'm saying. Don't keep your hopes up high, Razorback fans. I'm telling you, I think it's a CIA project that they're doing to test your loyalty to see how far can you go to be a Razorback fan? Because I can tell you personally, it is tough, but yet we continue to keep showing up and supporting this team. Hopefully Van Horn and the Razorbacks can get it back on track and finally find some success in one of these series moving forward before we get into the SEC tournament play. Let's move on. We're talking about number 9 Vanderbilt on the road to take on number 23 Ole Miss over in Oxford, Mississippi. How about Ole Miss getting a victory 8-3 in game 1 off 11 hits, 1 error for the Rebels, and on the other side for the Commodores, 4 hits and 2 errors. Excuse me, as Ole Miss gets that 1-0. Then we move to game 2. Ole Miss handles this one 7-1 off of 8 hits for the Rebels and 1 error on the other side for the Vanderbilt Commodores, 6 hits, 0 errors. It goes up 2-0. Ole Miss handling top 10 Vanderbilt. Then we go to game 3. And how about Vanderbilt saying, no, you're not going to sweep us. You may win the series, but we're not done yet. Vanderbilt's get the victory. 13-0 in game 3 over Ole Miss. Vanderbilt in this one, 16 hits, 0 errors on the other side for the Rebels. 3 hits, 2 errors. Vanderbilt putting it up big in the 5th, 6th, and the 7th inning before this thing was called short. How about Ole Miss teetering on that top 25? Vanderbilt gets into the top 10. Ole Miss wins the series over Vanderbilt.
Vandy is I had a tough week this week, man. It came at like the worst possible times. We talked about last week, man, kind of similar to what we just said about Arkansas, man. They were in position to possibly make a move here, and they were trending in the right direction, and they just collapsed this week, man. They had a really, really tough week. But I look at Ole Miss, though, man. They are in again. They're in a really, really good spot right now. 12-9 in conference, 1 game back of Tennessee, 2 games back of LSU, Arkansas. Ole Miss has these moments, man, where they look like they're a legit top 5 team in the SEC,
Yes,
Paris.
they
They
do.
really do. Like when they're playing their best baseball, they are a tough team to go against. But then on the flip side, man, when they are cold, Perry, they are ice cold, and they can lose to almost anybody, right? We've seen them have some really, really bad losses. It's just trying to find some sort of consistency and like where is the middle ground for Ole Miss? Like because we know that they don't always play like a top team in the SEC, despite them having that gear. But they always don't play terrible. But they also have had games like that. Where's the middle ground for Ole Miss? And that's what I'm interested to see. And I think they're going to be tested down the stretch, Perry, because they have some momentum right now. But Perry, what happens next week when we come back on here and they lose another midweek series and they get beat by just somebody that we know they're more talented than? We'll be right back in the same place, right? Because we just talked about how hard it is to win on the road, right? They get Austin P midweek, but Perry, they got to go on the road to Oklahoma next week. It's tough to win in Norman. Then you look after that, Perry, they go on the road to Starkville. Tough to win on the road in the SEC, and then you close the season out at home against a good Auburn team that's the top 10, top 15 team in the nation. There's no more easy series, man. I think Ole Miss is going to have to show some more consistency to establish themselves, and I would say in the top 5 of the SEC and build some momentum before we get to, like you said, the postseason with the SEC tournament, regional, super regionals, things like that.
That's right. Let's move on. How about this one? A rivalry game. Texas A&M taking on Texas. The first meeting of both of these programs in the SEC. And this was one where Texas A&M came into this thing pretty hot. One of the hottest teams in the nation. Texas is the hottest team in the nation. So this one was just a fire for anybody who had an opportunity to watch this one. How about in game one, the number one team in the nation, the Texas Longhorns in Austin, Texas, who they've had the luck of the draw of having all these big games at home. How about the Longhorns getting it done 2-1 in game one of this series of rivals off of the 7 hits and 1 error for the Longhorns. On the other side for the Aggies, 8 hits, 1 error. This game was back and forth. 2-1 was the final in game one. We go into game two. How about Texas? Once again, a close one. 3-2 is the final. Here's the Longhorns hold on as Texas A&M was able to put up a run in the top of the ninth, but it was not enough. 7 hits for the Longhorns, and this was 0 errors. And for the Aggies, 5 hits, 2 errors, a close one. Then we get to game three. Can A&M get a victory in this one after coming off of that series win last week at Arkansas? And they don't. Another close one. 1 run decided in this one. Texas 6-5 and gets the series sweep over Texas A&M this weekend. The Longhorns get it done off of 8 hits in game three and 0 errors. And on the other side, for the Aggies, 9 hits, 0 errors. How about Texas doing what they do best, showing you why they're the number one team in the nation, especially against a red-hot Texas A&M team. And this was preseason number one taking on current number one, and it went back and forth. 1 run was the deciding factor in all 3 games. A hell of a matchup between these two rivals in their first conference series between each other in the SEC. But nonetheless, Texas, Austin, Texas, tough place to play. Hands down, might be the toughest place to play in the country, no doubt about it.
How about those Longhorns, man? They are just so complete. And again, man, and I can't talk on it enough. And we talked a little bit about it last week, right?
Mm-hmm.
Their pitching is unbelievable to watch. I mean, Perry, just in SEC play, right? They played 21 or 22 games in conference, right? They are their pitching staff has a 2.88 ERA in conference play this year. Do you want to know what second place is? LSU with 4.23.
Mm.
Perry, that is dominance. They have 3 more saves than anybody else in the conference, and they're holding opponents in conference play to a 2.15 batting average. They are
Wow.
dominating from the mound, and it's not even close, man. And they're not giving. Um, they have allowed only 150 hits in conference play. Every single other team has allowed 10 or more hits in conference play in that span. They're not walking people. They're not allowing many earned runs. They're not allowing runs in general. They are they have allowed 72 runs in conference play. The only other team under 100 is LSU, who's allowed 99. That's like 30 more. That's 30 less runs in conference play allowed. They are dominating, and also on top of that too, they have the best fielding percentage in the conference as well, and their hitting is what, middle of the pack. I think they're 8th in terms of hitting in the conference, but it doesn't matter when your pitching staff is just dominating people throughout the series. And I think it's tough to win on the road, right, Perry? But it's also tough to sweep people in the SEC.
Yep.
This team right now, with how it's built, should be a heavy favorite right now to take it all home if they can continue to be as hot as they are, because pitching travels, man. Bats can go hot and cold, but the pitching staff is the ultimate equalizer there. 19-2 in conference, Perry, in the toughest conference in college baseball. They might have already locked this thing up, man. They are playing outstanding baseball. We'll have won 9 games in a row right now. The unquestioned consensus number 1 team in college baseball right here.
And how about showing that impressive record in year 1 in SEC play? You know, a lot of people say, there's no easy walk to just come into SEC territory and think you're going to win games. Texas said, hey, hold my water, man. Don't worry about it. We'll show you exactly what to do. And they're doing it right now in conference players. They're flexing their muscles each and every week. And it does not matter who the opponent is. And it started when they got the series victory over LSU. And then they got the series victory over Georgia. Now they have the series victory over A&M. And these are teams that I'm mentioning that are coming into Austin hot. And Texas is finding a way to cool them down and cool them down quick in Austin.
And it is absolutely impressive. I'll be curious because we kind of mentioned how hot A&M was. Is there a team in the SEC that we feel like is built to give them problems? I don't know, because I just like, at the end of the day, they keep, like you said, one of the big things, and we really have to break it down is I do think their SEC schedule really did help them because having all these series at home is huge. And I do wonder, and the problem is like as much as I wonder if they'll do it on the road, they're 9-1 on the road as well. So it's like, will moving it out of Austin hurt? I don't know. Maybe they don't sweep A&M in that realm, but man, Texas is so complete, man, and they are giving a lot of people problems.
They are. Let's move on to Auburn, Alabama. Mississippi State on the road taking on number 11 Auburn. Of course, Auburn coming off that midweek game and victory over Georgia Tech. And in this one, a one-run victory for Auburn in game one. 6-5 is the final score for the number 11 team in the nation. The Tigers offer 10 hits, 1 error in this ball game. On the other side for the Bulldogs of Mississippi State, 7 hits and 0 error. They up 1-0 in the series. Then we go to game two. Mississippi State said, hey, let's tie this thing up, make it 1-1, and that's exactly what they did. 12-7 is the final score as Mississippi State was able to get the victory in game two. The Bulldogs got it done off of 14 hits and 0 errors. On the other side for the number 11 Auburn Tigers, 9 hits and 1 error. Now, we got a rubber match going on in game three. Auburn says we're ranked in the top 25 for a reason. They held on to get the series victory 2-1 over Mississippi State, getting the victory 14-8 in game three off of 14 hits and 0 errors. On the other side for the Bulldogs, 9 hits and 1 error. How about Auburn doing what they're supposed to do, win the games that they're supposed to win, quote unquote?
Big series win for Auburn. I would have liked to see them sweep here, just because that would have put them into that next group, right, with the Georgias, the Bamas, the Vandy's, the Ole Miss. But hey, big series win here, and it was one they needed because I do think when you look at what Mississippi State is this year, this is one where Auburn probably felt confident that they were the better team
Mm-hmm.
significantly, right? And so and like I said on our previous episode, I think this was a must-win series. Auburn keeps pace. They get themselves above 500 in conference play, which is huge. Sitting at 30-14, they're firmly a top 10, top 15 team in the nation. They've set themselves up really well to host a regional, if not a super, depending on how the bracket works out.
We move on. How about Palminteri in South Carolina on the roll up in Lexington, Kentucky, taking on the Kentucky Wildcats in this one in game one? Kentucky all over South Carolina, 7-3 the final score in game one. 9 hits for the Wildcats, 0 error on the other side for the Gamecocks. 6 hits, 1 error, 1-0. Kentucky goes up in the series. We move on to game two. South Carolina squeaks it out. 5-4 is the finals. We get a tie series here. The Gamecocks offer 12 hits and 1 error for the Kentucky Wildcats. 5 hits, 0 errors. And this seems to be the trend all weekend. No easy games for anybody. We got a tie series going into game three. And then in game three, Kentucky say, hold on, man. We can't lose to you. And they didn't lose to South Carolina. They got the victory 11-5 in this one, putting up a big 5 run in the fourth inning, another 4 in the bottom of the 8th to seal the deal. Kentucky got it done off 11 hits and 0 errors on the other side for the Gamecocks, 11 hits and 4 errors for them. Kentucky gets the victory of the weekend, the series over South Carolina and Palminteri.
Another one where it was a must-win series, I think, for Kentucky. One where you really do feel like they were the better team, kind of similar how we talked with Auburn. And Perry, I know that's your guy up at South Carolina. We kind of talked about this. This is going to be a long year, man. They just don't have what it takes to compete in this league week in and week out. But Kentucky needed this game, man, because if you lose the series, you kind of fall into that bottom tier of the SEC. They're only one game back of Oklahoma in the standings, Oklahoma and Auburn. So this was a big one for Kentucky. And I think they've kind of kept themselves alive for maybe some postseason opportunities, but they're going to have to string together some wins down the stretch to feel comfortable going into the postseason.
How about the big game of the weekend? And I was in attendance of this one. I tried to make that Friday game. It was in a weather delay, lightning in the area. Game one, when we look at Tennessee, number 6 Tennessee on the road at number 7 LSU in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I stuck around. I was ready for the 6:30 pitch on Friday. Of course, the storm front came into the area. It rained, it lightened, and then we had a game delay. The game didn't really get going to about 10 o'clock. And how about this finish in this one? It did end into a little after 1 a.m. on Saturday morning between these two great teams. And you circle this one. This half for me was the game of the week. LSU gets it done in the bottom of the 9th inning after being down 3-0 all the way through this game. And a walk-off to win the game. 6-3 was the final in game one at 1 in the morning for the LSU Tigers over a really good Tennessee team. How about LSU in game one? 6 hits, 0 errors on the other side for the Tennessee, 9 hits and 2 errors. Game one gave you everything you thought you was going to get in this series. Electric, and literally electric with lightning in the area. Then we move on to game two. Tennessee wakes up in game two after that late night with LSU. They get it done. 9-3 is the final in game two as Tennessee, the Volunteers, get it done off of 10 hits and 2 errors on the other side for the Tigers of LSU. They got it done, fell short off of 4 hits and 1 error. Tennessee really opened it up late, especially in this game, with 6 runs in the 8th inning, sent the Tiger fans packing for the exits. And then we get into game 3, a hot 2 o'clock first pitch yesterday in Baton Rouge. I was there for this one as well, as LSU gets it done and clinches the series over Tennessee. 12-2 is the final in this one. LSU gets it done off of 13 hits, 0 errors on the other side for the Volunteers of Tennessee. 7 hits and 0 errors. LSU getting it done and putting up 4 runs in the bottom of the second to add another 3 in the bottom of the 8th, man. How about LSU hanging on for a magical game 1 and a dominating game 3 to beat the Tennessee Volunteers? For a while we thought were unbeatable, but as we get deeper into SEC play, we're starting to see no team is safe in this conference when it comes to a weekend series. And LSU gets it done, hold it down. And Alex Box Stadium was electric this weekend. You're talking about one of the toughest places to play in the country. And then you look at the overall attendance this season, almost 40,000 fans for the season. It was the largest 3-game series crowd in LSU baseball history over the weekend. And I must say, I was in attendance for for this one. So, man, it was electric. It was a tough place to play for Tennessee, and LSU able to defend Alex Box, Skip Berkman Field, and get the victory over a really good coach Tennessee Volunteer team.
Man, this was a big one for LSU, especially after the midweek debacle. I mean, you had to win because, hey, what happens if you lose that midweek game in the fashion that they lost it and they come out and lose to Tennessee at home? And you're the only team of the weekend to lose that home series.
That ain't what you want.
Yeah, I mean, and then also, too, with how tight it is behind Texas, right? I just want to put in perspective for people. Arkansas, LSU tied for second. Tennessee sitting there behind them. Then you have Ole Miss, Vandy, Alabama, Georgia, all tied at 12 and 9. Then you got Auburn and Oklahoma at 11 and 10, and then you still got Kentucky at 10 and 11. 1 or 2 games could take you from tied for second to tied for like 6th or 7th in this conference. And so this was such a big series for LSU. A good bounce back win. It puts them in firm position to finish second in this conference, especially with the way Arkansas is trending, right? If LSU strings together some wins, you feel good about jumping them. You now have the series win over Tennessee, and all those other teams behind you are 2 games back now, and you feel pretty good about yourself. And I think LSU has shown, and Perry, me and you have both talked about this, it would not surprise us if LSU got hot at the right time and started to string together these series win. Again, though, with the midweek, it's just that consistency. You look ahead now, though, the road is not going to be easy. You get at Texas A&M next weekend. You get Arkansas coming to you, so that's a chance to really put some distance. And then you go on the road and you get South Carolina. So if they can get past that series next weekend at Texas A&M, you feel really good that you can get a home series against Arkansas, and you should be able to sweep potentially South Carolina. So LSU was in a great position. This was a big test. And for them to get this series win was massive. And LSU is looking really, really good right now, even after the midweek collapse.
They are. And let's look at these conference standings. As you started to say, all these teams are jumbled up. It is working its way out to where when we were in about week 2 and 3, that was a big difference when we started to talk about the middle of the pack, and then we were looking at these elite teams in the bottom of the pack. Now everybody just kind of jumbled up, and it is amazing to see how many identical conference records there are out there. And we'll start at the bottom where there's only one team with this record. Nobody else is close to it. That's the Missouri Tigers, who are 0-21 in conference play right now, and they're 13-30 overall on the season. They're at the bottom of the barrel. Right above them, Palminteri in South Carolina at 5-16 in conference play, and they're 25-20, just hanging above that 500 overall record on the season. Here we go with Mississippi State at 7-14 in conference play. They're 25-19 overall on the season. Here we go, 2 teams that are trending in the right direction, but still too far down because of a tough start into conference play. Florida and Texas A&M, both right now with 8-13 records in conference play for A&M. They're 24-19 on the season overall. And when you look at Florida, they're 30-16 with 30 wins on the season so far. Both those teams 8-13 in conference play. Two teams paired up at 11-10 in conference play. That's Oklahoma and Auburn. You look at Auburn overall on the season, they're 30-14, and Oklahoma is 30-13. Move up now. Here's a bunch of teams tied at 12-9 in conference play. Ole Miss, Vanderbilt, Alabama, and how about Georgia falling from elite to the middle of the pack? You look at Georgia, although they're 12-9 in conference play, they're 35-11 overall. The Crimson Tide of Alabama, 35-10 overall. Vanderbilt, 31-13 overall. And Ole Miss, 31-13 overall. All those four of those teams tied at 12-9 in conference play. Here's Tennessee falling from elite, but still holding on to that elite status just by a thread. 13-8 in conference play. They're 35-9 overall. LSU, who got the series victory over Tennessee, right there above them at 14-7 in conference play, 36-9 overall on the season. The Razorbacks, who are trending in the wrong direction, of 14-7 in conference play, tied with LSU, and 37-9 on the season. And of course, the best team in the conference and in the nation currently, the Texas Longhorns, who are 19-2 in conference play, and they're 37-5 overall. I think we're starting to see middle of the pack jumbled up. Everybody's either 12-9 or 11-10 right there. Uh-oh, we lost Blue. We'll get him back. But looking at this, man, you have these elite teams. And right now, it's Texas, then it's everybody else. I would have put Arkansas in the elite status leading up into this weekend. Of course, number 5 on the season coming into this one. But for some reason, just cannot get these series victories, falling short in the past 3 series, losing to Texas A&M and then losing to Florida. They have kind of lost their luster. But when you look at these teams right now, it just seems to be Texas. I have to put Arkansas still as an elite team. Arkansas is a team that I feel is still a tough out for anybody. Now, don't sleep on them. And then you look at LSU and Tennessee. I think Tennessee is still a tough one. LSU is still a tough one. But all these teams, Blue, jumbled up at 12-9 or 11-10, man. This is the SEC. It's anybody's game any given weekend.
Yep. It anyone's game. I think there's, looking at the SEC standings, I think there's a gap between Texas and everybody else for sure.
Yep.
I would include Tennessee in that second tier, even though they're not tied with Arkansas, LSU. Like that would be like the tier 1B for me. And then I think, really and truly, man, I think you could go from Ole Miss all the way down to Kentucky, and all those teams are probably in the same tier. I really do. And I'll be honest, I think Florida could possibly, you could talk me into putting Florida in there.
You could talk me to putting Texas A&M
Yeah,
there as well.
exactly. Yeah, because I think you could take any of those teams, and to be fair, we've seen some of these teams do the same thing that we saw Texas A&M just do. Send any of those teams to Austin, Texas for a road series. There's a lot of them that are going to get swept.
Yeah.
And it's not an insult to those teams, right? I think that's more of a praise to how good Texas is. And so I really do think that tier 2 is massive, man. You could put like all those teams in there, and I'd be like, yeah, you could probably convince me of that. And then I think once you get past there, I think, you know, Mississippi State, South Carolina are teams that can sneak out a game or two here, maybe catch you in a series if they get hot. And then Missouri's down there by themselves. I don't even know why they're here. It's just going to be a long season, man. At this point, you just got to look at Missouri and be like, yeah, you just got to tear it all down, build it back up next season. It's going to be a long rebuild with how bad this team
What's
is.
going on with Georgia? You know, they were in elite status. We just talking a few weeks ago. I mean, this was one of the best teams in the country. I mean, they had made it all the way up to number 3 in the nation. Now they're just another middle of the pack SEC team, which is not a bad thing, might I add.
I think it was just, like I said earlier, man, they were hitting so well that it was covering up a lot of their other flaws. And now that their hitting's kind of come back to earth, those flaws are way more prevalent, and they're impacting them in a lot. I would say they're making a bigger impact on the results of the game. And I still think Georgia's good, but I also think we might have been a little bit too quick to put them in that top tier as well, because kind of similar to Texas, and they were getting a lot of home series that they were able to take advantage of. And then kind of once the schedule shifted, you kind of saw them come a little bit back to earth. And so I do wonder what the true ceiling is for Georgia. Because, we were talking College World Series. I don't know if I would go that far right now.
Yeah, me neither. I don't see it right now, and I'm looking at on the other side. I mean, as we inch closer into the SEC baseball tournament, man, at the rate that everybody's kind of stacking up to be even, with Texas being the most elite team right now, this SEC tournament this year should be fireworks. I mean, every game is going to have to be a must-watch game, because at this point, aside just taking Missouri out and taking South Carolina out, anybody can beat anybody any given weekend in this league. Aside from, let me just exclude, I'm going to put them on the pedestal, Texas. Texas is where I thought Tennessee was going to be weeks ago. Tennessee has since fallen, and Texas has just moved up to that spot of that I feel is almost unbeatable. But I know they can be beat. But I felt for a while Tennessee was that unbeatable team as they came into conference play undefeated overall. Then they lost that midweek game, and then things have kind of since, hey, they bleed too, just like everybody else. And that was the reality that we started to see with Tennessee. And it was evident this weekend in that series against LSU. But this SEC tournament, man, should be fireworks. Every game should be a must-watch game to see who's going to get to that championship.
Yeah, you say that anyone can compete. You got to put Texas on the pedestal and Missouri in the basement. Those two teams, it don't count for them. But no, man, I think it just speaks to, like we've talked about it so many times, it speaks to the depth of this league.
Mm-hmm. Let's move over to the midweek games. We got NKU, Northern Kentucky, taking on Tennessee. They're 24-18 on the season, 12-9, taking on Tennessee, coming off that weekend loss in that series to LSU. You think any upset here on the making for Tennessee?
No.
We move on. Charleston Southern taking on South Carolina. Charleston Southern 24-16 on the season. They're 10-8 in their conference, taking on South Carolina and Paul Manera. What you think right here?
I like South Carolina here.
Lamar taking on Texas A&M.
A&M.
Arkansas on the road in Springfield, Missouri, taking on Missouri State, who's 23-19, 13-5, has victory over Missouri. Which, does that mean much? Not sure, but nonetheless, should Arkansas be worried about this one?
I think this has upset potential. Not going to go as far as to pick it, though. I think this is one that we'll put them on upset alert.
I'm gonna tell Dave, man, hey, don't tick us off. Don't tick the Razorback fans off with this one. Go on the road and flex your muscle. I'm pretty sure the Razorback fans are going to be deep over in Springfield. Kennesaw State, who's 22-21 overall on the season, 12-6 in their conference, on the road in Athens, Georgia, to take on the Bulldogs. What you have here?
I'm gonna go with the Bulldogs here.
We got Kentucky taking on Western Kentucky in Bowling Green. Western Kentucky 34-10 on the season, 11-7 in conference play. Kentucky is a team that I feel at any given time can wake up, and they have shown it. Anything to worry about on the road against Western Kentucky?
Nope. Winning on the road in midweeks are a lot easier than winning on the road in the SEC. I like Kentucky here.
We got Memphis going over to Starkville to take on Mississippi State over in Stark Vegas, as they call it. Mississippi State and Memphis. What you think?
Give me the Bulldogs.
Indiana State, who's 21-22 overall on the season, 9-9, going on the road to Nashville, Tennessee, to take on Vanderbilt. What do you see in this one with Vanderbilt and Indiana State?
I like Vandy here. I mean, I can't, and I hate it because I keep picking these SEC teams, and there's always one that surprises us every week, and I'm just trying to put my finger on where it's going to be, but I'll go Vandy.
How about this rivalry game midweek? Missouri, the Tigers are 13-30 overall on the season, winless in conference play in the SEC at 0-21, taking on the Kansas Jayhawks, who are 35-10 overall and 15-6 coming out of the Big 12. What do you think right here between the Jayhawks and the Tigers in a rivalry midweek game?
Jayhawks big.
Jayhawks big. How about Auburn going over to Hoover, Alabama, to take on Samford? What you think in this one?
Another upset alert game. I think this could be one we look back on it and see a SEC team drop, but I'm a lean Auburn here.
All right. Texas taking on Prairie View. Prairie View coming out of the SWAC. They're 11-31 on the season and 70-11 in conference play, taking on the best team in the country. What do you think about this one?
Listen, shout out to Prairie View, but man, it's gonna be a long Tuesday night.
It's gonna be a long win. It's going to be a tough one. Wichita State, 13-30 on the season. They're 5-13 over in conference play, taking on Oklahoma up in Norman, Oklahoma. What do you think here? Wichita State, Oklahoma.
Oklahoma.
Southeastern. How about the Southeastern Lions coming to Baton Rouge? They're 31-11 coming out of that Southland Conference, 18-6 in conference play, taking on LSU with that big weekend series victory over Tennessee. LSU faltered last week against a Southland opponent, in Northwestern State falling 13-3, game called in the 7th inning. Hopefully it does not mirror that. What do you think? This one of those, hey, let me circle it.
Yeah, I'm gonna go upset alert,
Oh,
but lean LSU here.
just you might want to pay attention early in this one, huh?
Yes.
I think I'm gonna go to this game on Tuesday. I think I'll check this one out just to see if LSU can hang on and continue their winning ways. And then Austin Peay will be on the road up in Oxford, Mississippi. Austin Peay, check this out, Blue. They're 34-10 overall and 18-3 in their conference, taking on Ole Miss, man. Oh, what do you
Yeah,
think?
this is gonna be the one. Austin Peay.
Let's look at the weekend series coming up this weekend, man. It's a big game. You're going to have Auburn on the road at Tennessee up in Knoxville, Tennessee. What do you see in this matchup between Auburn and Tennessee? Should be a top 25 matchup between these two teams.
Yeah, this is a really, really big series here. God. Well, where's the series at again?
Knoxville.
Yeah, I like Tennessee 2-1. It's tough to win on the road, like we've talked about a million times. Auburn has not shown the consistency that I would like to see, so I think Tennessee 2-1.
Go Tennessee as well. Then we got Florida on the road going to Columbia, South Carolina, take on South Carolina, with Florida off the weekend series victory over number 5 Arkansas. Can Florida keep it going on the road at South Carolina against Paul Maneri, Blue?
Yeah, I like Florida 2-1. I think Florida wins a road series, gets one, shows that it can be done, and you can win on the road.
I'm with you on that one. I'm going Florida as well. The Georgia Bulldogs going up to Columbia, Missouri to take on the Missouri Tigers. And this one, what you see?
Georgia 3-0.
I'll leave
Big bounce back
it
win
at that.
for Georgia.
Kentucky going down to Stark Vegas. I'm so used to calling it Stark Vegas. Starkville, Mississippi. Kentucky is a team that I like. I'm not going to lie. I think Kentucky is sneaky good. But they'll be taking on Mississippi State. What do you see in this one between Kentucky and Mississippi State?
This again, man, it was 8-0 road series, home teams last weekend. I've already picked 2 road series victories. I'm gonna go a third here, though. I'm gonna go Kentucky 2-1. They're not gonna get the sweep, but I think they are good enough to get this one done.
LSU on the road going to College Station to take on Texas A&M, who was red hot coming into this weekend series with Texas, but got cooled off by the Longhorns. But nonetheless, watch out for Texas A&M. LSU having to go on the road after being hot in this series this weekend, literally against Tennessee. Now we look at this one. Should this make up for a hell of a 3-game series between the Tigers and the Aggies?
Okay. I'm gonna go upset here.
Ooh.
I'm gonna go Texas A&M 2-1.
What is the deciding factor? Is it going to be the bats or is it going to be the pitching for A&M in this ball game?
One, I think it's a home field advantage. 2, I think the bats can get hot enough to get it done, and also too, LSU's shown the ability to be a little bit inconsistent, and I think A&M capitalizes at home on that.
Should be a good one. I'm gonna go LSU in that series. I think Texas A&M is trending in the right direction. But after watching LSU this weekend, I'm gonna roll with LSU in that series. How about Alabama and Vanderbilt in Nashville, Tennessee? Alabama, the Crimson Tide on the road taking on the Commodores. This is a tricky one for me. What you think about yourself?
God, that's a lot of road victories.
Hey, follow your heart.
I think I'm gonna go Vandy 2-1.
Yeah. I'm going to go Vandy in this one as well. I think I'll roll with you. Alabama has been up and down. Vandy has showed, hey, they're getting back on track. And I like what I see with them. The Commodores head in the direction that they're going. Ole Miss on the road going to Norman, Oklahoma to take on the Oklahoma Sooners. What do you think about Ole Miss in this one against Oklahoma? Here's your opportunity pick the home team unless you just think this seemed like the weekend for the Road Warriors, doesn't it?
It does. There's some really, really tough matchups for these home teams, but I'm gonna go Oklahoma 2-1 here.
I'm gonna go the other way. I think Ole Miss gets it done in this one. Oklahoma, I get it at home, but I'm gonna go Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss gets it done 2-1 in this series with Oklahoma. And then here's the one I'm gonna circle. Had they won this series this weekend, I really would have thought this was gonna be the big one. It's still a big one. I just really don't know how to measure it right now. Pause. Texas taking on Arkansas. How about the Longhorns and the Razorbacks, rivals from those old Southwest Conference days? Now here they are in Fayetteville. This should be a big. This probably be the biggest attended game of the weekend. What do you think about the Longhorns and the Razorbacks? Where this probably was going to be a top 5 matchup a week ago.
Another road team victory, man. Give me Texas 2-1.
No way you can go against Texas, huh?
Nope. I almost went sweep, but that just seems disrespectful. So I'm gonna go 2-1 here.
And that is going to put some pressure on Arkansas because if Arkansas drops this series, that'll be 4 consecutive series losses in this conference. And I'm going to have to start continuously keeping that ringing alarm. I've been ringing it for 2 weeks. I just kind of felt this thing coming because this is typically how it goes for the Razorbacks. But this is a must win for this one. I think Arkansas at home, this is the first true road test for Texas in conference play. I'm going to go Arkansas 2-1 in this one. Arkansas has to get it done. No way they can lose 4 consecutive series in this conference. They have to come ready to play. And nobody better to flex that in against your rival in Texas. I'm going to have to go with Arkansas in this one. All right, Blues, we've reached the end of the show today. We always end it by going over the top 25, man. Give us the top 25 and what we're looking like this week.
Yeah, man. Listen, some interesting developments here. We got Kansas jumping into the top 25
Jayhawks
at 25. Shout out to the Jayhawks,
Rock.
man. Arizona at 24. Ole Miss down at 23. Southern Miss still hanging around at 22. Oklahoma at 21. Troy and Coastal Carolina still hanging around at 19 and 20. Alabama down at 18. Louisville at 17. West Virginia at 16. Vandy at 15. UCLA at 14. NC State at 13. Tennessee dropping all the way to number 12 here.
Wow.
Arkansas dropping all the way to number 11. Wow. And this is where the shocker comes, right? Because those two teams rank fairly high in the standings, right? Like Arkansas is tied for second, right? Tennessee's third or fourth? Mm-hmm. Auburn,
right behind LSU.
Auburn is number 10, above them in the top 25. Georgia's at 9. Then you got UC Irvine at 8. Oregon and Oregon State at 6 and 7.
How about Oregon getting those victories over Oregon State this weekend?
Huge win there. And then a string of ACC teams. Florida State at 5, UNC, North Carolina at 4, Clemson at 3. Then you got LSU at Texas 2 and 1. But very interesting because, Perry, right now Auburn is behind a lot of these teams that they're ranked ahead of in the standings. Auburn at 10 is ranked above Arkansas, Tennessee, Vandy, Alabama, Oklahoma, and Ole Miss.
Some wacky stuff going on, isn't it?
Hey, it's some out-of-conference games, man.
It is. Auburn and it matters. You get a lot of fans, hey, they blow off those midweek games. You cannot blow those midweek games off. And especially the type of games, because we've seen Auburn and Georgia Tech go back and forth over the past couple weeks, man. No. And Auburn has really shown there that they can play, and it adds up and it matters. And I think, like you said, that's why you see Auburn right there. Auburn plays a pretty damn good brand of baseball, what we see in midweek games.
What's interesting is, looking at the RPI here, Auburn ranks 4th nationally in RPI right now. And also, too, Texas is number 1. Georgia is still number 2. Vandy's at 3. Auburn's at 4. Arkansas at 5. So that's how the RPI shakes out, man. So very, very interesting stuff here in terms of RPI and where these SEC teams rank.
How about the ACC knocking them down, starting to climb? This thing was top 5, was just top 10 was all SEC at one time, but the ACC is starting to get some teams in there. How about you said UC Irvine has cracked the top 10?
Yes. UC UC Irvine, top 10 right now, number 8.
I got to go check out some UC Irvine games. I got to see how they get down over there because we've already talked about the Coastal Carolina, the Troys, and the Southern Miss on how they've continuously found themselves actively in the top 25, getting victories here and there. But to see UC Irvine crack the top 10, man, and guess what? They're safe from the rest of these teams until further notice.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm just super interested to see how this plays out, man, because you have a bunch of SEC teams that are competing, right? You have a lot of the ACC teams there, like you mentioned, Clemson, UNC, Florida State. Then you also have NC State at 13. You have Louisville at 17. Man, the ACC is going to be just as competitive up top. And you kind of look around in the RPI, every single team in the top 10 is ACC or SEC. Man, it's looking like the College World Series might be represented by those two power conferences, which is very, very interesting.
I was going to go there next because literally in my mind, that's what I was thinking. Like, man, this thing is just going to be ACC, SEC, and maybe you'll sneak some teams if they can get through the regional, super regional. Maybe let's see how far UC Irvine can go. Let's see how far Southern Miss can take it. The Coastal Carolina, for you looking at those out of the way teams that aren't ACC, SEC, who worries you that could possibly be the most, have the best opportunity with the biggest upset?
Mm, I mean, UC Irvine's interesting, right? With what they've done. I mean, 19-2 in conference. They got a win over Nebraska. They got wins over Texas Tech, but they lost to Vandy earlier this year as well. They got a win over Oregon State that was ranked, a win over UCLA that was ranked at the time, but they really don't play anybody else, so I don't really know what their potential is. I'll say this, I think Oregon State's a very interesting team, man. They've been really good over the past few years.
Oregon State was
But
ranked number 3 coming into this weekend with Oregon.
yeah, a tough loss this weekend, like you mentioned earlier, but they've played a decent schedule. But they have lost to teams like Auburn, Oklahoma. I want to say they got a win over Nebraska. They got a win over UCLA on the road, which was big. But getting swept by Oregon makes me a little bit hesitant. And I think Oregon can make some things interesting as well. They got some ranked wins that they're putting together a solid schedule. So I think there's a few teams up here. And then also, too, I always just kind of got Southern Miss scheduled, right? I don't know if they're a true contender, but if they get hot, they could really, really test a few of these teams in the right matchup, right?
And it sounds like we're going to have a lot of regional games in SEC, ACC country.
Oh yeah, I'll be very curious to see how the seeding goes out, right? Because it's kind of looking like you're gonna have what probably 75% of the regionals in like ACC or SEC country is like the whole super regional could be in the South.
Yep.
Very interesting.
And where is the Big Ten in all of this?
Listen, man, they're spending all their money on football, basketball, and like lacrosse.
Yeah, man, it seems like it's going to be ACC, SEC as we continue to count down, as we inch closer and closer to conference tournaments, man. And as we wrap up the show today, I want to thank everybody for watching here on the live on the On the Yard Network, Facebook, and then you can also catch this on the On the Yard YouTube channel as well. If you get a chance, not get a chance to catch us live, you can always come back and watch this episode, man. I'm Perry White, my man Zach McKinnell. Of course, I host the Jaguar Journal every Saturday morning on 107.3 FM in the Baton Rouge capital city area. And then you can catch me right here on the Yard with my man Zach. And Zach, let the people know where they can catch you and find you, man.
Yeah, man. The Blue Bloods on all podcast streaming platforms on YouTube, FCS Football Central on SI, and here on Monday mornings, man, talking SEC baseball with my guy Perry White.
And then, of course, the Jaguar Journal across all social media on X, Instagram, Facebook, as well as YouTube. If you want to follow and keep up there, you can subscribe and like that. And then the On the Yard Network across all social media, X, Instagram, right here on Facebook, as well as on YouTube. And, man, just continuously supporting us. We thank you guys. I can see the views go up. You guys are tuning in with us as we continue each and every week to bring you SEC baseball recaps as well as the top 25 outlook. And, man, we'll be at the conference tournament here soon before you know it. And then we'll be in regionals and super regionals. And then, hey, It'll be Omaha. We'll be asking what teams are going to take home the trophy this year. So we appreciate you guys for going on this journey with us and continue to rock and roll. Be sure to like this page and be sure to hit the share button. Let people know what we're doing and what we're talking about, because there's somebody out there that wants to keep up with this and want to find someone who's talking about it. Guess what? Zach and I are talking about it. So you guys continue to support us, as we love everything that you guys are doing by supporting us. So until next week, hey, Blue Man, have a good week, man.
Yep, you too, man.
And everybody out there, have a good week. Thank you guys for continuously supporting us, and we'll see you next week, 10 o'clock. All right.